All right, we're back with a special midweek episode of Cutter Simpsons Unhinged because I have to go to the dentist later on today. That being June the 2nd, so I have an off day so I can actually do a Simpsons episode in the meantime. Let's go through the 22 episodes before this, just like the basic topics. Season 23's Lisa Goes Gaga, considered one of the worst episodes ever. Season 19's that 90s show with Marge and Homer negotiating the 90s, and of course, with Professor August involved. Season 24, the episode with Homer not being faithful to dogs, but Grandpa tells the story how Bongo bit Mr. Burns and they had to get rid of Bongo, and Homer hated dogs and Abe since. Season 3, Homer at the Bats. This was the episode that beat the Cosby Show in first run syndication back when The Simpsons were on Thursdays instead of Sundays. Season 21's Olympic episode, that was when, during the Olympics, I had to do this episode, and Homer and Marge do mixed curling in Vancouver, and Lisa obsessively collects pins. Season 11 was Maud's death, obviously, that episode that basically changed Ned's character into being overprotective of Rod and Todd, and Homer becoming jerk-ass Homer in a sense. Season 15's Tis the 15th season, the Christmas episode in which Homer vows to be nicer, and then Ned, for some strange reason, wants to compete with Homer, even though that Homer is trying to redeem himself. Season 9's Principal and the Pauper, yes, the episode that jumped the shark, and how everyone just wanted a fake more than the real one, especially Agnes, because then she can control Armin and not deal with her son who leaves her. Season 5's Homer and Apu. I needed to put it in a Apu episode in eventually. And this was the one when Homer inadvertently gets Apu fired from the Quickie Mart, and Apu lives with the Simpsons, and the famous song, Who Needs the Quickie Mart, happens. Season 7 was Lisa the Vegetarian, our 10th episode of Simpsons Unhinged. This was the big one in which Lisa becomes a vegetarian, and Paul McCartney only signed on if Lisa becomes a vegetarian. Are they waiting him out? I don't know. And then season 22's Love is a Many Strangled Thing, when we talked about how Simpsons seem to always push that Homer needs to strangle Bart because without it, Bart becomes a villain. And then season 31's Todd Well Fouls Forsaking Me. This was the episode in which Todd turns his back on God after taking Maud away from him, and Ned sends him to live with the Simpsons, but can't believe that nothing's happened. Season 35's Lisa gets an F1, and when Lisa has anxiety, drives go-karts, alleviates her problems, deals with Paulo, a rival, and how Homer is not happy with his parental role being switched with Marge. And then season 16's gay marriage episode, in which, it was huge, and Homer changed his anti-gay stance mostly for De Niro and Patty coming out of the closet and all that, and me being pissed off that the couch guy had them have the Stanley Cup in the season that the NHL was under. Anyway, season 32's Diary Queen, when Bart finds Mrs. Krabappel's diary but learns that he was an inspiration to her, but Lisa finds the truth and ruins it for him. I don't know why. Then we took a break from the Simpsons episode to do the Family Guy episode dealing with the Simpsons and how, how Family Guy was close to the Simpsons and how it may have given the Simpsons a second win to everyone's chagrin. Then season 10's Bart the Mother, when Bart BB guns and shoots a mother bird. Marge disowns them, so Bart tries to raise the eggs of his own, and then Marge helps him through with aftermath. Season 17, the Italian Bob, when Sideshow Bob is a mayor of an Italian town, and the Simpsons just happened to be there because they had to get Mr. Burns' new car. Season 8's Homer's Enemy, the famous one in which they basically were trying to say that Frank Grimes gets nothing even though he works hard, and Homer gets a sloth life thing and gets a lot of reward, and he doesn't care about it. And then episode number 20 was the famous season 18 episode Kill Gil, in which I talked about how Marge's inability to say no to Gil may have led to some psychological trauma, and that she's been dealing with psychological trauma for 37 years. Basically, what the real Jim's has not done yet. I wish he did. And then I talked about the Simpsons movie, about how Homer ruins the town and all that in a Homer way, and basically they make Homer fill it, and Homer seemingly goes to Alaska, wants to stay in Alaska. The town Marge and family wants to save Springfield from being obliterated, even though the Homer has a point. And last Saturday, I talked about the Homer and Ned's Hail Mary, in which it was a Super Bowl themed episode for 2005 because this was aired after a good Super Bowl, and how Homer choreographs things and Mr. Byrne and Ned does movies. Anyway, so that's a long intro. Now let's talk about a season 9 episode that is good. And the key question: where is Springfield and why does Springfield lose so much? Jerk has Homer, Marge's worries, Bart's pranks, Lisa's causes, Maggie not talking a lot, Grandpa being senile, Patty and Selma boring Marge, Arnie Sif is a jerk, Chief Wiggum making things happen, Mr. Burns being a dick. You can never stop the Simpsons. Heaven knows they've been trying for years and they still come back for more. 37 seasons is a bit much, don't you think? It's a crazy Simpsons. Something happens. A do 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 do. This is not a clip show. Have no fear. I've got topics for years. All right. You see the stock picture. Why is there trash? Why is Homer in a white uniform? Why is there some guy groaning at him on the right? And why is U2 there as well? All will be explained. This is the season 9 episode, Trash of the Titans. I know I talked about season 9 with Principal the Pauper, but this is a bonus episode from season 9 with Trash of the Titans because it has the big message I will talk about later on. Anyway, so this episode starts with Cossington's being upset that summer sales are low because, Father's Day just passed and the next major holiday is Labor Day or even Columbus Day. So they decided to make a holiday called Love Day to try to get the summer's shopping dollars. Lisa sees through it, but Homer tells her to shut up. So they indulge in it and they have to throw everything away. That is Love Day. And of course, it ticks off the common denominator. Homer ends up forgetting about the trash and then tries to take it out, but unfortunately, he gets too late and he yells at the garbage man. So the garbage man decides to not pick up Homer's garbage. Unfortunately, it's through the front yard. There's Diaper Hill, and Homer is nonchalant about it. However, he finally thinks he wins by having the garbage out there. Unfortunately, though, he doesn't win because of the simple fact that um, Marge actually wrote a letter to the sanitation commissioner with Homer's signature to get them to pick up everything. Homer is upset, even though Marge says that he signs her name for things. Homer says, "You just signed away my dignity." So he gets his letter back and all that. But he's upset with Commissioner Patterson's stuff, even though that, he is being nice, the commissioner. Homer decides to take over sanitation commissioner because he got ticked off. Unfortunately, though, he says it in the wrong line because it's the line to become a sexual predator, which Patty is there, and Mo says, "Oh, there's always a line." So anyway, regardless of that, Homer tries to do a good campaign. Bart even helps him out and says that vote Homer for sanitation commissioner because if you don't, he'll beat us if you don't. And Homer says, "Nah, I'm not going to beat you." And then on a hot mic, he says, "I'll beat you so badly." And then he interrupts a U2 concert to try to be sanitation commissioner, but fails miserably. Of course, everyone praises Commissioner Patterson's stuff. And Homer says, "We could do better than that." And then Mo says to Homer, "You need a good campaign slogan." And Homer says, "Can't someone else do it?" And it works because he's going to make the garbage man do a lot more for people and all that. And tell how lazy this is. And this is in the 1990s, if you might know. Anywho, so Homer thinks he's won the thing with Commissioner Patterson not being there for the debate, but Patterson said that someone tampered with his brakes, thinking that Homer probably did that as a dirty tactic. Homer tries to fix the situation, but Commissioner Patterson basically says that it's just nothing too much to ask for. So anyway, Homer is told to well, Patterson was upset with Homer's thing. Homer ends up winning the election in a landslide, and the subtitle is Crazy Promises the Key. So Homer has to live up to his crazy promises. He refuses to even buy for the newspaper, signaling his win. So Homer gets to work with the stuff of round the clock garbage care and getting the garbage men to do household chores and all that, like cleaning up Chief Wiggum before an event, taking away Krusty's naughty stuff without judging him, Marge's dirty diapers, and U2 doing something. There's even a schematic in the DVD that Milhouse was going to do a line about him needing the garbage man to help him out with his parents' divorce and all that. Anyway, so Homer thinks he's fixed everything. Unfortunately, though, he spent every dollar on the budget on his crazy promises. So basically, the yearly budget is taken out in 1 month. And unfortunately, Homer forgets to set aside money to pay the garbage man. So anticipating a strike, this was a little good. Marge tries to help Homer out. Homer says he just rubber stamps everything. Although Homer does have a plan and gets the garbage man paid, there's suspicion around the family, and they all think it has to do with drugs. Homer says no. He just gets American cities to pay to put Springfield garbage into Springfield. Lisa wishes it was drugs, and Bart says some of it is. So Homer thinks he solved the problem, but unfortunately, all the garbage piles up and spews out like old faithful onto the town. So the town is massively covered in garbage. They decide to put Homer on a post, tar and feather him. And at the same time, they decide to have Ray Patterson come in, but Patterson refuses to come back, saying that they had the problem. All that. So practically, Springfield's now trapped. However, Mayor Quimby opens up the Plan B envelope and all that. Their solution: just move Springfield 5 miles down the road. Basically, have trucks carrying all the buildings, and then they'll just fasten them in and make a new Springfield and all that. Lisa just says that it's going to be a temporary solution because, of course, they're going to damage the new Springfield, and then on and on and on. Homer nonchalantly throws a potato chip bag out the window. Basically, Homer gets this problem, and then he just saying, well, good riddance to bad rubbish. So that's the episode. It was a good episode and all that. Of course, it does always point it, just like Homer's enemy, that Homer seems to cause a lot of problems, but in the end, he gets rewarded. He ruins the town by being sanitation commissioner, doing the crazy promises, and forgetting to pay the garbage men. So he decides to have towns pay to put their trash in. One problem, though, it blows up in his face, but Homer seems to not be punished at all. I guess it was the perfect opportunity for Springfield to move and all that. Now, before I get to the main topic of this video, I want to talk about, this episode actually does have a cultural reference in Canada. You may be thinking, how? Well, simple. Because when in 2000, Toronto had a massive garbage problem, and they had a solution to put the garbage into Northern Ontario. Councillors Jack Layton and Olivia Chow were against it, and they played a clip of Trash of the Titans about Homer doing the same thing, and everyone is just shocked that they would do such a thing. The cultural significance of Trash of the Titans, and that's when Toronto stopped, deciding to go to a mine in Northern Ontario. They'll just find somewhere else for a landfill. Jack Layton would soon become the Canadian leader of the New Democratic Party, the Orange Party, which I support because I can't trust the Liberals or Conservatives, red or blue, and all that. But anyhow, he was popular. He even was the leader of the opposition. He took second in the 2011 polls to the Conservatives, whereas the Liberals were terrible, and then they needed to fix things, and they took Justin Trudeau to be their leader. So yeah, he did that. And Olivia Chow is now the mayor of Toronto as of 2024. So, things change. So now let's talk about Springfield's geography. We have to. So now the big question remains is, where the frig is Springfield and all that. So many states are mentioned. They even mention a few times that maybe it's not in the United States and all that. Springfield's got a weird geography. At times, addresses and orientation, if you will, is just not right. There are times with the Simpson house that, the kids' bedrooms are either on the separate sides of the house upstairs or side by side, and they can easily put their hand through Homer's bedroom. And of course, the neighbors of the Simpsons and all that. Like, Ned is always beside him. And on the left hand side, there's like a rotating group of people. So, of course, the picture you see is of talking about the five corners and all that of where Springfield is with things of Ohio, Kentucky, Nevada, and Maine. Obviously, you can't be that close to each other, as the picture shows, if you're looking at through the pictures. So the question on everyone's lips is, where is Springfield? Although in season 12, when they did that Simpsons Behind the Music parody, they talked about Springfield being the family being from Northern Kentucky. I actually looked a few days after that episode aired and found out that, yeah, Northern Kentucky has a Springfield. They even have a Shelbyville. There's not too many U.S. states that have a Shelbyville alongside Springfield. There's plenty of Springfields, like 30 of them. But the question is it even in Canada? Well, Matt Groening does have inspiration from Winnipeg, but no, it wouldn't be in Canada. They would be raising the Canadian flag a lot more often. So, yeah, the geography is there. Northern Kentucky, it makes sense because geography-wise, it makes sense because Shelbyville's right there. But the main problem is, and this actually has been talked about by the YouTube channel Simpsons Fury with Lydia, who actually made an appearance in a Simpsons episode that hijacked Lisa and Bart's Boy Scout battle with stuff. And yeah, she realizes that Springfield moves around every so often. There have been only a couple of times in which we kind of knew about Springfield moving. The first one, of course, was Trash of the Titans when they did the Plan B and they moved that 5 miles down the road. It was actually referenced in the season 10 episode FIFA Ned Flanders when they decided to blow up Burns' casino and all that because of people being bored of it. Lisa quips that, I'm surprised the casino came when we moved to town, of course, referencing Trash of the Titans, and Homer says he had a hand in that. And then there came the explosion, not the implosion. And then there was the 500th episode, At Long Last Leave, in which we saw the Simpsons put on trial by the town of Springfield because they're broke trying to fix everything. Homer's wild, crazy, drunken antics, Bart's pranks that have become less funny and more destructive, Lisa's environmental stuff that doesn't cost money, but it's annoying as fuck. They basically point out that Maggie shows little emotion, it doesn't cry, and then Maggie does the throat slash at Cookie Kwan. And then Marge tries to explain her family being good, but everyone hates on her because she always puts her family in a good light. They're forced out of Springfield. Towns are told not to accept the Simpsons, and some even offer concessions if they catch the Simpsons. So anyway, Homer and them do their jobs. They actually go to the Badlands, meet some people, and enjoy themselves. But Marge misses Springfield so much that Homer sneaks her in, but they're caught. But then Marge makes a speech saying that, you're lost without us. And then Springfield realizes all that, and everyone turns on Mayor Quimby. And so Springfield decides to do the one thing possible. They're going, if the Simpsons can't come to Springfield, go on to the Simpsons. Even though that the Simpsons try everything to beat up on everybody, Mayor Quimby says that we're willing to move Springfield to you and have you live in it. So they move everything from Springfield to the Outlands and all that. They do leave Principal Skinner behind, but Bart in a helicopter does rescue him because Bart kind of needs Skinner and all that. So those were two of the major things about moving Springfield. I think they move Springfield more often than not. Of course, we don't catch that. Of course, there's 742 Evergreen Terrace, was once referenced as 1094 Evergreen Terrace. It's possible that the towns moves every so often to avoid creditors, to avoid trouble, and all that. And when they're broke, they just find a new place. Either they find ways to move the town to their next destination, or they just find some buildings that are eerily similar and move in there. It's a common thing. That's possibly why. And I know Lydia did the Simpsons Fury book about Springfield being moved, and it makes so much sense. It makes sense why the geography sucks and all that. They probably moved Springfield from state to state to try to avoid trouble, and that's what happens. So that's my fury about this episode. It's not as long as I thought it would be, but that's okay. So anyway, we're gonna have a Saturday episode this Saturday, the 6th, because the World Cup's coming to town in Canada, US, and Mexico. We are going to do the Simpsons soccer episode in which Homer becomes a FIFA referee and the Simpsons correctly predict bribery and Germany, Brazil. I'll tell you all about it on Saturday. I'm Jeff Diamond. Adieu.